Hey guys, coming at you with a slightly more serious video topic today. These are the top 5 Pokemon I wish my grandpa could have used in Vietnam. So let's just go straight into it. Number 5, and that's Mr. Mime. Using the move Light Screen, learned at level 36, I think Mr. Mime could have helped my grandfather conceal himself from the treacherous Viet Cong. And not to mention with the move Safeguard, which heals all status conditions, my grandfather need not have worried so much about falling into one of the Viet Cong's notable spike traps, which they often slathered with poison, meaning almost certain death for those without access to either penicillin or Mr. Mime. Number 4, Miltank. Now, it's my understanding that my grandfather was extremely malnourished during his deployment, which may have contributed to the decision making that led to his eventual death in the jungles north of Khe Sanh. I believe Miltank might have produced sufficient milk for my grandfather to stay in caloric surplus, or at least caloric maintenance, for the duration of his time in Vietnam, assuming that Miltank is relatively hardy, and my grandfather would have access to either chesto berries or super potions. Number 3, Jinx. So this is an often underrated part of military service, but if my grandfather had had Jinx when he was in Vietnam, he would have had female companionship, because unfortunately my grandfather was a Southern Baptist Christian and therefore held back from purchasing prostitutes on his rare trips into the mean streets of Long Binh. And even when his whole platoon pressured him, he always held strong. And judging from this fact and also the lengthy letters he was writing to my grandmother, I can see that he was extremely starved of female companionship, and I believe the Pokemon Jinx would have really helped to fill up the hole in my grandfather's heart, especially on those long, hot nights beneath the mosquitoes net outside An Loc, where my grandfather lay restlessly listening to the encroachment of the northern forces into the summer of 1972. Number 2, Dragonite. I previously mentioned my grandfather's letters, and I believe that with Dragonite, who is widely known as the delivery man Pokemon, his fervent words written to my Baba might have reached the shores of America far faster, and thus my family would have a better record of his thoughts, his dreams, and everything that happened to him during the war. Not to mention the fact my grandfather might not have lain awake, my grandmother might not have lain awake so many nights wondering what my grandfather was doing, where he was, and if he was even still alive. Now, I have to admit, this is a relatively far-fetched scenario, because we know Dragonites are extremely rare and expensive Pokemon. Even if caught wild, they require at least a dozen, usually more Ultra Balls to be caught, which would have run into the hundreds, if not thousands, of Pokédollars. Considering my grandfather was a soybean farmer from rural Missouri, we could hardly expect him to be able to afford to catch a Dragonite. But this video is about dreaming, and in dreaming, we do find a kind of redemption. So I'm going to continue to dream of a Dragonite for my grandpa. Now that gets us to number 1, and I think this one is going to shock a lot of you guys. But the number 1 Pokemon for my grandfather in Vietnam would have been Eevee, because Eevee would have given my grandfather a choice, which is what he and so many other young men of his generation never ever got. They were drafted into that godforsaken war, forced to fight in it rather than allowed to wait or buy a different evolution stone entirely, metaphorically speaking. A stone that might have marked a different direction for the American Empire and for their lives. A stone that might, like Vaporeon or Umbreon, be a mark of self-determination rather than a reckless rush towards an ill-defined concept of progress and power. I would have given my father an Eevee, and all the stones and evolution guides he might have ever needed, so that he returned home, if he ever returned home from Vietnam to his farm in Missouri, he would have had something besides bad memories to keep him company on the porch. And guys, that's pretty much it. I've thought about this a long time and wondered which Pokemon would have helped him the most, and just let me know in the comments if you think there are any other Pokemon you would have liked to have seen my grandfather use in Vietnam. I might make a follow-up video talking about my great-great-grandpa, talking about what Pokemon would have been great for the trench warfare in World War One. I'm thinking Mewtwo would have been amazing to have, though he would be tall, so if he stood up, that could potentially be an issue. And then also World War II. There are a lot of great Pokemon when we talk about World War II. One that specifically comes to mind are actually the starters, Charizard, Bulbasaur. These are important because they would have progressed with you through what was a pretty lengthy and emotionally difficult war. I think with a Blastoise by your side, you could have put out fires. You would have also had some help reaching out to the occupied territories as you moved, from France into Poland, and where as an American soldier, you need to reach out to the community there. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and just let me know if there are any other Pokemon my grandpa should have used. And also just RIP to my grandpa. I hope there's a Umbreon or at least an Eevee or a Meowth or some kind of Pokemon up there in heaven. RIP.